Imagine spending months planning a surprise anniversary for your mom and stepdad, saving every extra dollar from your paycheck, making lists, and dreaming about their happy faces, only to be told you're not welcome at your own event. Crazy, right? Stay with me, because what happened next changed how I see family forever. My name's Alyssa Monroe. I'm 27, a nurse in Austin, and if you ask anyone, they'd tell you I'm the responsible one. I grew up watching my mom, Marianne, go through hard times before she married Greg, my stepdad. I thought he made her happy. So when their 20th anniversary came around, I wanted to do something special, something that would remind her of the love she once believed in. For months, I planned every detail. After my long shifts at the hospital, I'd scroll through venues and caterers. I found a cozy garden hall outside the city, perfect for an evening party with lights, music, and family. I even booked a small band that played their wedding song. I didn't tell Mom or Greg anything. It was supposed to be a surprise. I used the money I'd been saving for a new car, almost $5,000, to make it perfect. The florist knew me by name, the caterer promised a menu Mom loved, and I personally designed the invitations with gold trim. I imagined her crying happy tears when she found out. But as the date got closer, something felt off. Mom stopped answering my calls as often. When we did talk, she sounded distracted, like she didn't really want to know what I was doing. Greg, on the other hand, started acting controlling. He wanted to check every detail, even though he had no idea it was meant to be a surprise. He kept saying things like, "Don't make it too expensive, Alyssa. You have a habit of overdoing things." Then there was Brielle, my stepsister. She's 24 and loves drama. Lately, she'd been smirking whenever I mentioned the party. Once she said, "I hope you're not wasting your money, Alyssa. People don't always appreciate what they don't ask for." It stung, but I brushed it off. Still, I pushed forward, convincing myself it was just stress. I told myself that once they saw what I'd done, everything would make sense. Maybe it would bring us closer. Maybe Greg would finally see me as family instead of the extra baggage that came with Mom. The night before I confirmed the final details, I called Mom, wanting to share a tiny hint of the surprise. She picked up but sounded cold. "Alyssa, I'm kind of busy right now," she said. "Greg's handling something about the anniversary already. We'll talk later, okay?" Her words hit me like a cold wave. I didn't know it then, but that call was the first crack, the quiet beginning of a betrayal I never saw coming. You know how sometimes you look back and realize the warning signs were there all along? That's exactly what happened to me. Stay with me, because once you see how it started, you'll understand why I should have known this anniversary plan was doomed from the start. I still remember the day Greg came into our lives. I was 16, awkward, and still trying to deal with my parents' divorce. When Mom introduced him as the man who makes me smile again, I wanted to like him. At first, he seemed great, polite, funny, always bringing little gifts for me. But it didn't take long for me to see another side of him. When we were alone, he'd make comments that felt like small stabs. "You know, Alyssa, you really should learn to help your mom more. You're kind of lazy for your age." Or, "You'll understand adult things when you're older, sweetheart." Then, when Mom walked in, he'd suddenly turn into the perfect man again, charming and affectionate. She'd look at him like he hung the moon. I tried telling her once how he treated me when she wasn't around. She laughed it off. "Greg adores you, sweetie. Maybe you just misunderstood." From that day, I learned to keep quiet. It was easier than being called dramatic. Years passed, and Greg's grip on our family tightened. By the time I became an adult, he was in charge of everything. Where we went, what Mom spent, even which relatives were acceptable. I thought things might change once I moved out and started working as a nurse. But even with my own life, I still found myself trying to win their approval, especially his. So when I planned their anniversary, I hoped maybe this would be the thing that finally made him see me differently. But during the last few weeks of preparation, his old self came back full force. He demanded to approve the guest list, even though I'd already invited close friends and family. He called the theme too childish and said the menu was trying too hard. Every time he spoke, it felt like a slap to my effort. Still, I bit my tongue. I told myself it was worth it if it made Mom happy. She didn't notice how his words drained me. She was too busy agreeing with whatever he said. One night, when I brought over samples of decorations, Greg took one look and laughed. "Gold? Really? Marianne, your daughter's taste hasn't improved since high school." Mom giggled softly, like she didn't want to upset him. I stood there, pretending to smile, my heart tightening. Driving home that night, I stared at the road through blurry eyes. I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what I did, I'd never be good enough for him or for her. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. Not then. I still believed love could fix what pride had already broken. Have you ever worked so hard for something, only to have it ripped away like it never mattered? That's what happened to me 2 days before my mom and stepdad's anniversary. Stay with me, because this is the moment everything fell apart. It was a Thursday evening. I had just come home from a long hospital shift when my phone rang. Seeing Greg's name flash across the screen made my stomach twist, but I answered anyway. His voice was sharp and cold. Alyssa, just wanted to let you know the anniversary event has been taken over by a professional planner. We won't be needing your help anymore. For a second, I thought he was joking. Wait, what? I already paid the deposit, the catering, everything. Why would you? He cut me off. It's all handled now. We need it to look professional. You've done enough. The way he said enough felt like a punch. I tried to laugh it off. Greg, come on. This was supposed to be my gift to Mom. I just wanted to make it special. He sighed like I was a child interrupting an adult conversation. Look, Alyssa, we appreciate the thought, but let's be honest. You overstepped. This is a family milestone, and it needs to be done right. Enjoy your weekend. Then he hung up. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I called Mom immediately. She didn't answer. I called again. Finally, she picked up, sounding nervous. Honey, can we talk later? I'm in the middle of something. Mom, Greg just told me I'm not handling the anniversary anymore. What's going on? There was a pause. I could hear Greg's voice faintly in the background. Then Mom said quietly, maybe it's best if we just let the planner handle things. You've done so much already. Her words didn't even sound like her. I could tell she was repeating what he'd told her to say. My throat burned, but I managed to whisper, so I'm not invited? She didn't answer. Just silence, and then the call ended. That night, I sat on my bed surrounded by all the decorations I'd bought, boxes of gold ribbons, candles, table cards with their names printed in silver. My apartment felt smaller, emptier. I told myself maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe she'd call tomorrow and explain everything. But the next morning, an email came from the venue. It started with, Dear Ms. Monroe, this is to confirm that your reservation remains under the name Marianne and Greg. However, your name has been removed from the guest list at the client's request. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. The party I had built from nothing was happening, but I wasn't allowed to be there. My heart felt heavy in my chest, like something precious had been stolen. Not just money, but love. That was the moment I finally realized. In my family, I'd never really belonged. Have you ever stood in front of someone you love, begging them to see how much they're hurting you, and they just don't care? Stay with me, because that's exactly what happened the day before the anniversary. I couldn't take it anymore. After the email from the venue, I drove straight to my mom's house. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight they hurt. All I wanted was to hear her say it wasn't true, that it was all some kind of mistake. When I got there, she opened the door, looking surprised and a little nervous. Alyssa, what are you doing here? I tried to keep my voice calm, but it cracked anyway. I just need to understand why I'm not invited, Mom. I planned this entire thing for you. I spent months trying to make it perfect. She looked away, twisting her fingers. Sweetheart, please don't make this harder than it already is. Harder. I repeated. Mom, I paid for the whole thing. I booked the venue, the food, the band, everything. And now Greg says I can't come. That's when I heard him. Greg stepped out from the living room, holding a glass of whiskey, a smug look on his face. Alyssa, he said smoothly, it's not personal. We just think the event should be, well, for adults. You'll understand one day when you host something yourself. I stared at him, speechless. I'm 27, Greg. An adult. And I'm the one who paid for it. He took a slow sip, eyes locked on mine, and said, Then consider it a donation. You'll survive. My mom gasped softly, but didn't say a word to defend me. She just stood there, trembling, like she didn't know whose side to take. Mom, I whispered. You're really okay with this? She looked at the floor. Greg thinks it would just be awkward if you were there. He's worried it might cause tension. I don't want any drama at the party. I felt something inside me break right then. I'd been invisible for so long, but this was the final proof. I didn't matter. Not to him, and not even to her. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said, forcing a smile that hurt. If that's what you both want, fine. I won't come. I turned around before she could answer. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry in front of them. As I walked to my car, I could still hear Greg's low laugh behind me, the sound of someone who thought he'd won. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, staring at the house that no longer felt like home. Tears finally came, hot and heavy, but under all that pain, something else started to grow, a small, sharp flame of anger. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just hurt. I was done. Have you ever been so hurt that anger becomes the only thing keeping you standing? Stay with me, because that's exactly where I was after they told me not to come to the anniversary I planned and paid for. That night, I couldn't stop crying. My apartment felt empty, my heart even emptier. I didn't understand how my own mother could go along with Greg's cruelty. Around midnight, I finally called the one person who had always been there for me, my best friend, Harper Quinn. The second she heard my voice, she knew something was wrong. "Alyssa, what happened?" she asked softly. I told her everything. How Greg kicked me out of my own event. How my mom just stood there. Every word came out broken. When I finished, there was silence on the line for a moment, and then Harper said, "I never trusted that man. Remember when he lost your mom's tax refund a few years ago? Or when your savings for nursing school just disappeared from that joint account?" Her words hit me like a cold wave. I'd pushed those things out of my mind back then, convincing myself they were mistakes. But now it all made sense. What if this isn't just emotional manipulation? Harper said, "What if he's stealing from you?" I sat up, heart pounding. No way. I mean, he can't. The money I used for the anniversary, I transferred it to Mom's savings account so I wouldn't touch it. Exactly, Harper said. Whose name is on that account? My stomach turned. It was under both my mom's and Greg's names. The next morning, Harper came over with coffee and determination. We sat on my couch with my laptop open, logging into the online banking app I'd helped Mom set up months ago. My hands trembled as I typed. When the page loaded, I scrolled through the recent transactions, and there it was, one line that made my breath stop. Transfer, $12,000 to Greg Monroe, 2 weeks ago. It felt like the air was sucked out of the room. "That's your money," Harper whispered. "He paid himself back using your own savings." My throat tightened. "He stole from me," I said quietly. "He stole everything." We checked the rest of the transactions, and it only got worse. Greg had been moving small amounts for months, covering it up with fake household expenses. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was theft. I sat back numb. The man who had called me childish and ungrateful had been stealing from me while pretending to be the responsible one. The party, the decorations, the food, it was all still happening, but paid for by my own stolen money. Harper looked at me with fire in her eyes. "You can't let him get away with this." And for the first time in my life, I agreed completely. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I was going to make him pay. Have you ever been betrayed so deeply that your pain slowly turns into calm, calculated anger? Stay with me, because that's exactly how I felt when I realized Greg had stolen from me and used my own money to throw the party I wasn't even allowed to attend. For 2 days, I couldn't eat or sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Greg's smug face and my mom's silence. I kept hearing his voice saying, "You'll understand one day." It made my skin crawl. I wanted to scream, to confront him, to make them feel what I felt. But Harper stopped me. "Alyssa," she said, sitting across from me with her serious face, "you can't just show up there and explode. That's what he expects. You need to be smarter than him." I rubbed my eyes. "He stole $12,000 from me, Harper. He humiliated me in front of my own mother. I want him to pay. And he will," she said quietly. "But not the way he thinks." That's when we started digging through the event documents. I'd kept every receipt, contract, and email from the venue. I wanted to be sure there was proof in case I needed it for legal reasons. As I went through the folder, one line in the hotel contract caught my eye. The booking name read, "Alyssa Monroe, event owner." I froze. "Wait, the reservation is under my name," I said. Harper leaned closer. "What do you mean?" I said slowly, "Technically, I'm the one who owns this event. I paid for it. It's under my name. That means they can't make any changes without my permission." Harper's lips curved into a small smile. "Then it sounds like you're the one in control, not Greg." I stared at the paper for a long time, my heart pounding. Suddenly, the fog in my mind started to clear. I didn't have to yell or beg. I didn't have to make a scene. I just had to use what was already mine. "What if," I said carefully, "I let the party happen, but make sure it ends differently than Greg planned?" Harper's grin widened. "Now you're thinking like him." but smarter. For the first time in weeks, I actually smiled. It wasn't out of happiness, it was out of power. All the pain, all the tears, all the humiliation, I could finally turn it back on him. I spent the rest of the night on my laptop, writing emails, making calls, double-checking the event details. Harper sat beside me, whispering ideas and encouragement. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan, one that would make Greg regret ever crossing me. I looked out the window at the pink morning sky and whispered to myself, "You took my money, Greg. Now I'll take your pride." Imagine quietly owning every detail of a party someone else thinks they control, then using that power to expose them. Hear me out, because the next steps were small, calm moves that exploded everything Greg thought he'd won. I called the venue the morning after I found the bank transfer. My voice was steady when I said, "Hi, this is Alyssa Monroe. I'm the event owner for the anniversary on Saturday." The woman on the other end, Jenna, sounded polite and professional. I kept it casual, like I was checking a minor detail, but inside I felt sharp and focused. I explained that a few final touches needed to be updated. I didn't tell her why. I only asked for help with the banner and the slideshow, two small things that meant everything. Jenna asked for proof I was authorized. I sent copies of the receipts and the contract with my name on it. She replied within an hour, "We'll make the requested changes." I breathed out like I hadn't in days. Next came the banner. Originally, it was a soft, gold-lettered sign. "Happy 20th anniversary, Marianne and Greg." I told Jenna I wanted the wording to be more personal. I picked my words carefully and laughed softly as I typed them into the request box. "Congratulations, Greg. Enjoy your divorce." I left it to the venue to print. It was a small sentence, but it would hit like a hammer. The slideshow was more important. Greg had spent hours making a show full of staged photos of him and Marianne, all polished and perfect. I uploaded a new set of slides. The first few were normal pictures, family photos, smiling faces, to keep everything looking innocent. Then slowly the tone shifted. I added screenshots of his bank transfers, the $12,000 line item, emails where he told Mom to let the planner handle it, and a string of messages between him and another woman, flirty, careless, proof that he'd been acting like the hero while stealing. I labeled each slide clearly. Fact, then the date and time. It felt clinical, like evidence on paper. I also called a few people I knew would matter. I reached out to Mom's closest friends and told them I'd hoped they'd come to surprise her. I didn't tell them I wouldn't be there. I asked them to arrive a little early and to be ready in case Marian needed support. Then, quietly, I sent an email to Greg's workplace HR. Not to ruin him, but to alert his boss that Greg might be involved in questionable financial activity. I wanted faces in the room that mattered, people who would make him uncomfortable in front of others. With each call and email, my hands shook a little, but my voice stayed calm. Revenge didn't feel like fireworks, it felt like locks turning one by one. I planned everything not out of cruelty, but out of a need to make the truth land where denial had lived for so long. The night before the anniversary, I sat on my couch with Harper. We didn't cheer or celebrate. We just looked at the list of invites and the confirmation emails. The banner change approved, the slideshow upload accepted, Greg's boss marked confirmed. I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I hadn't wanted this. I had wanted my mother to be honored. But when honor was stolen from me, I chose to give it back in the only way left, by making sure everyone finally saw the man behind the smile. Ever watch someone's perfect life fall apart while you sit quietly outside, finally breathing again? Stick with me, because that's exactly what happened the night of my mom and stepdad's anniversary. A night that was supposed to be full of love, but turned into the loudest silence they'd ever heard. I didn't go inside. Harper and I parked a few blocks away, in the same car I'd driven every weekend to help plan that event. We sat there with the windows down, the faint sound of music drifting from the hotel ballroom. My heart thumped hard, not from excitement, but from something colder, a mix of fear, sadness, and control. For once, I had power, and it scared me as much as it satisfied me. My contact at the venue, Jenna, had promised to text me when things started. At 7:10 p.m., my phone buzzed. "They're walking in now." I gripped the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I could see the glowing windows of the hall, people clapping, a perfect night, until the banner dropped. The next message came seconds later. OMG. Everyone gasped. I imagined it, the golden drape falling, revealing those sharp black letters. "Congratulations, Greg. Enjoy your divorce." My chest tightened. Somewhere inside, laughter and confusion turned into silence. Greg's friends would be staring. My mom's smile would freeze. Another text. Greg looks pale. Marian just covered her mouth. Then the slideshow began. It started normal, just like I'd planned. Pretty pictures of them, happy moments. But then, slide by slide, the truth unfolded. Screenshots of the stolen money, the messages to another woman, the proof of how he used me. The crowd's cheers faded into a wave of whispers and gasps. People were shifting in their seats. Greg's boss, sitting front row, stood up and left. I could almost see his expression, that fake confidence melting away. For years, Greg had controlled every story about our family, always the charming husband, the clever businessman. But now, his lies were up on a big screen, in front of everyone who believed him. Harper squeezed my hand. "You did it," she whispered. But I couldn't smile. My throat felt tight. I didn't feel proud. I felt empty. Then another text came from Jenna. "Your mom ran out crying. Greg's trying to follow her, but people are stopping him." That's when the tears finally came, not from guilt, but from heartbreak. I had wanted my mom to see the truth, but I never wanted her pain. I never wanted it to end like this. The music had stopped. Guests were leaving. The hotel lights dimmed, but inside me something brighter lit up. Not revenge, but release. I took one last look at the hotel before driving away. I didn't win anything that night. I just ended a story that should have never started with lies. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outcast. I just felt free. Have you ever watched the person who broke your heart finally realize they were wrong? Stick with me, because when my mom showed up at my door days after everything fell apart, I didn't know whether to hug her or close the door. It was 3 days after the disastrous anniversary night. I hadn't heard from her at all. The silence was heavy, like waiting for a storm you already survived but still feared. Then there was a soft knock. When I opened the door, my mom stood there, pale, eyes red, her shoulders small like she'd aged overnight. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, like she was searching for the right to step inside. I moved aside quietly, and she walked in, her hands shaking as she clutched a small purse. The same woman who once defended Greg no matter what now looked lost, like the world she'd built around him had finally crumbled. "I didn't know," she whispered, her voice barely there. "Alyssa, I didn't know what he was doing. I thought you were just angry." I wanted to be angry again, but I couldn't. The anger had burned away, leaving only sadness. I sat down across from her and said, "I tried to tell you, Mom. I really did." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "He emptied my savings. He left the house yesterday. I told him not to come back." She took a shaky breath. "You were right about everything." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The apartment was quiet, except for her soft crying. Then she looked up at me and asked, "How did you do it? How did you find the strength to do what I couldn't?" I smiled weakly. "You taught me," I said. "You always told me to stand up for myself. You just forgot how to stand up for yourself for a while." Her lips trembled. She reached across the table and took my hand, her fingers cold but familiar. We both cried then, not out of guilt or revenge, but out of release. The years of distance, the silence, the arguments, all of it finally cracked open. She stayed for hours that night. We didn't talk about Greg again. We talked about when it was just the two of us, the laughter, the movie nights, the small apartment we once called home. I realized I had missed her more than I hated what she'd done. When she finally stood to leave, she hugged me tighter than she had in years. "I'm sorry for not seeing you," she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. The pain was still there, but so was hope. Our relationship wasn't perfect. It was fragile, like a glass we'd just glued back together. But it was real again. And maybe that was enough to start over. Have you ever realized that the hardest battles you fight aren't against other people, but for yourself? Stick with me, because months after everything happened, I finally understood why I did what I did, and how it helped me take my life back. Life had slowly started to feel lighter. My mom, Marianne, had left Greg for good and was rebuilding her life on her own terms. She found a small condo downtown, and I spent a weekend helping her move in. Boxes piled up in the living room, and the air smelled faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings. It wasn't a mansion or a grand house, but it felt safe, cozy, and most importantly, ours. As we unpacked dishes and photo frames, I came across a small, dusty box labeled Family Memories. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside were old photos, birthdays, holidays, graduations. Then I noticed one that made my stomach tighten. It was a picture of our family from years ago, but the edge of the photo had been cut. I was partially missing from the frame, my face cropped out. I looked at Mom, unsure how to feel. She gently took the torn piece of the photo and held it to the missing corner. "I never noticed this before," she said softly. Then carefully she taped it back in place. I watched as the photo became whole again, a quiet but powerful reminder that even when we were broken, we could still be fixed. We spent the afternoon laughing softly, unpacking and reminiscing. For the first time in years, Mom and I felt like a team, not like strangers living under the same roof. She thanked me more than once, not just for helping with the move, but for giving her the courage to leave Greg and start over. Later that evening, I decided to drive past the hotel where the anniversary disaster had happened. The marquee was blank now, the lights off, as if the event had never existed. I sat in my car for a moment, letting the memory wash over me. The banner, the slideshow, the whispers of guests, all of it felt distant now, like a dream I had survived. I whispered to myself, "Worth every penny." And I meant it, not because I had humiliated Greg, but because I had stood up for myself. I hadn't done it to hurt anyone. I had done it to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my sense of justice. That night, as I drove home, I realized that closure wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about knowing I had the strength to protect myself, to speak up when I was wronged, and to help the people I loved see the truth. The pain had shaped me, but it hadn't broken me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I had survived betrayal, exposed the truth, and reclaimed my place in my own life. I knew the future wouldn't be perfect, but it would be real, and I was finally ready to live it on my own terms. Do you think Alyssa made the right choice by standing up to her mom and stepdad? Or should she have just let it go? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if stories like this move you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another one.